So now that you know a little bit more about sleep, what happens when you don't get sleep? This is the gentleman that I was talking about earlier. Randy Gardner went without sleep for 11 days in 1965. 4 days into this research, he started hallucinating, which was followed by a delusion where he thought he was a famous footballer. Now, Randy was actually functioning quite well at the end of this research. He could still do a lot of gross motor skills or even play pinball, but it was his psychology or his thoughts that didn't seem to be working too well. There is lots of research as well, I mentioned, done with rats. And in the rats, they deprived them of sleep, and the rats actually started to develop giant welts on their bodies and big sores, and then would die after quite a few days, 9 days or 14 days, depending on individual differences in the rats. Next slide, please, Steve. Thanks. So for you, because you're not going to be going for 11 days without sleep, fingers crossed, otherwise your mother needs to come and teach you how to go to bed properly again. You will probably, if you have a poor night's sleep or little sleep, will experience small decrements in attention, so your ability to attend to a topic or divide your attention, vigilance, and also your memory for information. So you can see how attention and vigilance is particularly important when you're driving. If you have reduced attention and vigilance and you're driving in the car, there's research that shows this can be just as dangerous, if not more dangerous, than someone with a blood alcohol level above their recommended levels for driving. There's also increased incidences of depression or low mood, increased problems with balances and falls, especially if people are medicating with sedatives, increased motor vehicle accidents, increased hypertension and cardiovascular morbidity and mortality, particularly in people with a disorder called sleep apnea. Next slide, please. Okay, so now that we've sort of said what sleep is and what some of the most problems that come out because of poor sleep, why do we sleep? This is a minefield of a question and something that I can't even begin to answer, and there are a number of brilliant minds out there trying to answer this presently. But basically I can say it's because it's restitution for the brain functions, for your autonomous functions. So anything that is in your nervous system or an automatic function, it sort of renews those and rejuvenates them. It's also thought to be for energy saving, so back in the day when we were living as monkeys and we didn't have enough fuel supply, this would be that you only had to operate on a high fuel supply for half the day and then you could rest. Also for predator avoidance, and this is also sort of relates into that energy saving idea, is that back in the day, our eyes didn't work too well in the dark and we didn't exactly have a torch, so people went to sleep at night when they might accidentally just walk into a lion or walk off a cliff, so they went to sleep at night. It's also, there's lots of information suggesting that we sleep for brain growth and for neural plasticity. So the idea behind brain growth and neural plasticity is that often the animals that need the most sleep are born in a most premature, or their brains are born quite prematurely. So say for humans, for example, babies when they're very little need a lot of sleep, and anyone who has a young child will notice that they sleep a lot of the day, and a lot of that sleep is actually spent in REM sleep. As we age, we sleep less, possibly because there's less new information to learn, and also we have less REM sleep, possibly because we need to sort less new information into what we already know. But I can't answer definitively why do we sleep. Thanks, Steve. Okay, so what is aging? Senescence, which I think is a very beautiful word, is the state or process of aging. It is the accumulation of changes in a person over time. Now, age can be sorted out into biological and social aging. Social aging is that cultural age expectation of how people should act as they grow older, and that will be different in different cultures. And the biological aspect of aging is an organism's physical state as it ages. Most of us will probably know that as AKA wrinkles. Okay, next slide please, Steve. as we age, there are differences, and this is a little bit what I touched on before. Your sleep changes with age. What you can see on the screen in front of you is actually how much of time during a 24-hour cycle someone spends in dreaming sleep, which is that REM sleep, which is called rapid eye movement sleep because people's eyes tick from left to right and up and down quite fast. Non-REM sleep, which are those other stages we talked about, stages 1, 2, and 3, or awake time. And you can see that these stages change as we age, and eventually getting to old age where people have very little REM or dreaming sleep and their non-REM sleep actually tends to be a bit more broken. And as we age, people tend to find that this is quite an inconvenient thing, and they worry that their sleep is impacting upon their day. And we'll talk more about that. Is broken sleep a normal thing as you age, or is it something you should be worried about? Okay, thanks, Steve. Next slide, please. This is another graph here, and I think this one demonstrates particularly how your sleep changes as we age. So as you age, you tend to spend more time in that purple gap where it's non-REM sleep or non-dreaming sleep, and more time awake. You can see that there's quite a vast change from a young baby to someone in their 70s. Okay, next slide, please. Again, just accentuating the fact that your brain activity actually changes as you age as well. This is that slow wave type of activity that I was telling you about in those deep stages of sleep. The top part is a 15-year-old male, and this is delta activity from his brain when he's been in deep sleep. And you can see as that tends to, what happens is those waves get smaller as someone ages. Okay, thanks, Steve. Next slide. Again, what you can see is that another change happens is that people who, as we age, tend to have what's known as an advanced circadian rhythm. They tend to have early awake times, so they're getting up at 5 a.m. rather than 6 or 7, and they're also going to bed earlier. And this sort of changes by about 1 to 2 hours. Also, what will happen in older adults is that they have more nocturnal awakenings. So older adults will have more sort of broken sleep rather than those solid sort of consolidated periods of sleep.